You know when you imitate a player?
Recording started.
Hi, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. Password attack and defensive. Oh, the lowly password. We use it all the time. But really the question is, does anybody really care about having a secure password? A couple of events that happened just last year, I think, illustrate, maybe answer this question well. There's a company called RockU that actually does gaming and some advertising that relates to Facebook. A year ago, January 2010, they had 32 million clear text passwords stolen, unbelievably. They stored these in clear text. And the attackers actually took them and posted them on the internet. Now what's interesting is not so much that the attack took place, but this gives us a chance to actually examine 32 million passwords. If you ask people about their passwords, sometimes you might get, accurate information or not so accurate information. But here's a chance really for us to look at 32 million passwords that people actually use. And so the results of those passwords were pretty interesting. 30% of the users of these 32 million had a password that was only 5, which was the minimum length, or 6 characters in length. And of course, longer passwords are more secure. Half of the users used names or slang words or dictionary words or just trivial passwords like consecutive digits or, adjacent keyboard keys. 60% of the users chose their passwords from a very limited set of characters, and fewer than 4% used any special characters. Now, here's a big quiz question. What do you think of the 32 million, what do you think, which password was used most frequently? Yeah, almost. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It was used by 290,000, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 was used by 79,000. And password was used, that was number 4. Okay, that's just, I wonder about number 6 though. Okay, that's right, number 10, ABC, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so these are the top 10 passwords, okay? Not too good in the, security area. And then back in December last month, Gawker was broken into, and security credentials of about 1.3 million users. These are accounts that you set up if you're going to leave comments, if you're using Gizmodo, that sort of stuff. Anyway, they also stole employee names and passwords, even though those are the founders. And likewise, these attackers posted these on the internet, and we had a chance to examine these 1.3 million passwords. Think we got any better over 12 months? Here are the top 10 Gawker passwords. Notice any similarities there? I wonder about the one monkey does. If I'm doing the password, I'm well, monkey doesn't make any sense, to me. Anyway, this was a study that was done, actually a couple of studies. I've kind of combined the information together. And I think it's fairly accurate in talking to people. 50% of the users have never changed a password they use online. That's probably pretty accurate. 40% of online banking customers reuse the same password multiple times. That's probably a pretty accurate one as well. 33% of internet users have shared their login information in the last 30 days. But that bullet point is all in red. 25% of financial fraud incidences occur because an attacker used someone else's privileges. So based on bad passwords, 25% of financial fraud is a result of that. Wow. 18% of users share their online banking password with somebody else. Those are pretty bad statistics. Anyway, you want to shake it down. This was another study that was done not too recently. It's about 3 years old now, but average user has about 25 accounts that require a password. I think that's accurate, 25? I actually think that number is low. It's low for me. I'll tell you why a little later. But maybe our average user has 25 accounts that require passwords. And on average, a user types a password about 8 times a day. Okay. Each user has about 6.5 passwords. That means that we are resharing passwords across almost 4 different sites. Okay, this is true confession time now, okay? True confession time. How many of us reuse passwords on more than one account? Okay, yeah, it's always unanimous. Once I get people past that barrier, it's always unanimous that we reuse passwords on multiple accounts. Now, what's a little scary sometimes is when we start thinking about, oh, you know, I reuse that same password on my bank account as I do on my email account, or maybe I just change one digit or letter, you know, or something like that. So we have a problem with password reuse. The lowly password. Well, should we care about it? You know, more and more accounts today are single sign-on. You may be aware that Facebook is very aggressively pushing towards single sign-on for all of those other entities which can connect to Facebook, so that Facebook users and all the games and all this other stuff, you simply have single sign-on. And of course, there's a real risk there that if an attacker uncovers one of my passwords, could have access to multiple accounts. And attackers today target email and social networking sites, so they're really after passwords there. And the reason for that is pretty obvious. You know, if I get an email and all it says is, it's from my friend John, and the body of the email says, hey, check out this cool link, and it's got a hyperlink right there. Most people are going to do what when they get that email from John? Click on that link. Yeah, well, obviously that could come from an attacker, and oh, yeah, then my system is infected just by clicking on that link. So attackers really target email and social networking sites. And attackers have a whole lot of new tools to break passwords, and some of these tools were just uncovered, made public, we'll say, this past fall. Going back to that RockView and the Gawker passwords we looked at just a few minutes ago, if an attacker created a list of the top 5,000 passwords and used a dictionary attack, and they had a DSL connection, they could launch about 110 attempts per second. That means that an attacker could break into an account every second, and it would take about 5,000 attempts to compromise 20% of the 32 million accounts. Wow. In that Gawker one that we talked about, someone using a single 8-core machine in less than an hour could crack 190,000 password hashes, and eventually they could probably crack around 400,000. Okay. Wow. Some of the things going on in terms of breaking passwords. Graphics processing units, these are separate from the computer CPU, and they're on graphics cards. They've been used for several years to, you know, display for gamers and that sort of stuff, although they're becoming more mainstream now. And some of the work of the CPU can be downloaded to the GPU to kind of accelerate specific applications. NVIDIA actually bundled some software called CUDA. It's a parallel computing architecture on all of its cards. And if you're using Apple Snow Leopard or Microsoft Windows 7, it's already automatically supported. GPUs have been used by attackers to very easily break passwords through a brute force attack. And this is how one of the things that attackers have started doing. They take machines that have 1 or 2 or 3 GPUs, and they use those in order to speed up these brute force attacks. Some researchers at Georgia Tech actually showed that an attacker who had a computer with a GPU could break a relatively weak password through a brute force attack. Yes, sir.
So brute force in what sense?
Brute force is, I'll show you in just a minute, okay. But I'm going to try every possible combination. Yeah, okay, yeah, which is different than a dictionary and some of the others, right? The researchers at Georgia Tech said, we can now say confidently that a 7-character password is hopelessly inadequate. Anybody here got a password that's 7 characters or fewer? My hand is up. Yeah, okay? Yeah. 7-character password is just essentially useless. Yes,
we have 7 numbers, our MIS system, and that's all it will support.
Oh, you're kidding.
No.
Just 7. Wow. Okay. Well, why they just...
And why have a password?
Why they have a password? I was going to say, yeah, but I'm glad you did. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so 7 is not enough. Now, the other thing is, this started happening back this past fall, is the cloud. You know, high-end GPU video cards can be a little pricey, you know, a couple $100 or so. So Amazon, of course, sells cloud processing services to customers. So a German security researcher purchased some processing power on Amazon. He actually configured Amazon, his processor, so he had 2 quad-core Intel CPUs and he had 2 NVIDIA Tesla GPUs, okay? So he configured a machine on Amazon, 2 quad cores and 2 NVIDIA GPUs. And here's the result. He used a program where he ran 14 hashes through this configuration that he developed on Amazon. He ran the hashes, and gives an example of one of the hashes, and those hashes corresponded to a password that was from 1 to 6 characters in length. And we'll talk about how to get those in just a minute. Notice, he was able to crack all 14 hashes, all 14 passwords in fewer than 49 minutes. Wow. And look how much it cost him. It cost him $2.10. Wow. So his comment was, hey, we now have large-scale password cracking for all. You know, $2.10, I can crack, 6 passwords. That's pretty good. Yeah. A good business to be in. Here's one of my favorite quotes by a well-known security guy, Bruce Schneier. The problem is the average user can't and won't even try to remember complex passwords. Advanced passwords are, users go out of their way to make it worse. Yep. Ask them to choose a password, they'll choose, a pretty lousy one. Force them to choose a good one, what do? They write it on the Post-it note. Hi, Michelle, how are you? Michelle was confessing to me the other day that she wrote some of her passwords. Every time she looks at the password on her Post-it note, she thinks of me. Is that right? Yeah, but the Post-it note is still there, right? Yeah, okay. All right. Anybody here besides Post-it note? A new mouse pad? Yeah.
I have it on a sheet of paper.
A sheet of paper, okay.
I always carry with me.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah.
2, 3 pages that are lost. Okay.
Yeah, you did, okay, yeah. So we'll write it on a Post-it note, or we'll change it back to the password we changed it from last month, and we'll choose the same password for multiple applications. I think that's a pretty good description of kind of the current state of passwords. This is an interesting one. This is from Bill Gates back in 2004. Gates said, no doubt over time, people are going to rely less and less on passwords. They use the same password for different systems. They write them down. They just don't meet the challenge of anything you really want to secure. And I think that's true. Passwords do not meet today's, how we need to get things secure today. Yes, sir.
One of my students who's working as an intern reported to me that the master password for the master control computer for a major Bay Area utility is on a Post-it underneath the keyboard.
Oh, you're kidding.
No.
Oh, you're kidding. That really is, yeah. Okay. Well, I think we really do need to care. But even if we don't care, I think we need to get our students to care. For several reasons. Think about your average student at your school, not an IT student, not one in information systems, but just an average student in your school. And think about it. We probably cover security in like an intro to computers course where we teach definitions about security. Probably most of us do that in the intro course. And we teach network security to our computer makers. But you know what? We leave out practical security awareness for all of our students. And the end result is we have students who are creating passwords that are 4 characters long or, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in their passwords or whatever the case may be, and they don't understand the implications of that. I think we need to be teaching all of our students about practical computer security awareness. Not just the IT, but all students need to have that. I like the term security literacy, and this quote is one that I've used for several years, and I just think that it's really true. Users should be as fluent with security literacy as they are with Office or email. And there actually is a lot of calls going on from both researchers and the federal government that says higher ed needs to be taking the reins here in teaching practical computer security to all students. And this is just some of the references. I can give you more of these if you want to. But there is really a call for teaching going on, and we need to teach all of our students the practical computer security awareness. Anyway, what we're going to talk about in this presentation is we're going to talk about some problems with passwords. We'll talk about some attacks, some defenses, and as time permits, we'll look at some alternatives. Okay, direction we're headed in? Okay. All right. Yeah, if you have any questions, just, let me know. Let's talk about problems with passwords. Some of these problems are fairly obvious. Of course, a password is a form of authentication. It proves who I really am. And we can authenticate individuals either by what they know, what they have, or what they are. There's kind of a paradox with passwords, I like to call it. You know, passwords have to be committed to memory, except for Michelle. I'm going to give you a hard time on that one. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm going to make you feel bad enough when you change that habit? You think so?
I'll change it tomorrow.
You'll change it tomorrow, okay? So good. So I need to break in. I need to break in tonight. Yeah, okay.
Well, wait a minute now. You don't have physical access to her wherever she posted them.
Let me call up her husband and say, hey, I'm from Cengage Learning, and Michelle is out of town, but something's wrong with the system. I need her password. Could you look at it on that post-it note? She told me to call you.
But if it was posted on it, she would ask that question. He was willing to give it. If he knew it, he'd give it.
He probably would give it as well. That's right. Yeah. So the post-it note just facilitates it. Yeah, because he may not know it without the post-it note. Yeah, but you're absolutely right.
But if she didn't have the post-it note, she might have a password that was only 3 characters.
She might have a password that's 3 characters. Yeah. So I'll show you some ways to get around that. But of course, passwords have to be committed to memory. Complexity, obviously. So that creates our paradox. You know, I've got to have a complex password, and I've got to commit it to memory, and that's hard to do. Coupled by the fact that I've got multiple accounts out there, you know, it just makes the problem even that much worse. The research has shown that we can only memorize 7 things. Sure, we can memorize 7 things. And once we try to memorize thing number 8, we either have to forget one of those 7, or we have to try and commit it to long-term memory. So because our memories are kind of like RAM and hard drive space, we have a short-term memory and long-term memory. Short-term memory is, I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday. But long-term memory is, I can remember the name of my 2 sons, you know, something like that. But the research has shown we can only memorize about 7 pieces of information. And of course, that places a really heavy load on our memory. So what we do to compensate for that, sure, we create weak passwords. It might be a common word or a short password or something like that. And here's some research by a couple of gentlemen who showed that as users accumulate more passwords, the number of unique passwords doesn't increase. So obviously what happens is when you use a password, sure. So there's one shortcut. Another shortcut is a limited character set. A lot of applications only have a 76 character set. Character set of 76 characters. Now, there was an analysis done of stolen passwords, much like those we talked about at the beginning of this. 80% of the characters in the passwords that they analyzed, and it was a couple million passwords, only used 32 of the 76 symbols. And something like 10% of the passwords were composed from only the 32 most common. So that's kind of interesting to me. So not only do we create weak passwords, but also we tend to use a very limited character set. You know, I don't know too many people that use anything other than A through Z lowercase and the digits 0 through 9. You know, if you do, you're special. Let's talk about hashing. Hashing, also called one-way hash, it creates a value from plain text. The hash value can't be decrypted, but it's used in comparison purposes. Here's the example that I like to give my students. I say, I'm thinking of the number 24. Okay? Tell me how I got the number 24. And the student may say, 12 times 2. Good. Another student may say, 25 minus 1. Good. Another student may say, 6 times 4. Good. A student in the front row says, 30 plus 7. You have those students? The students in the front row who can do that. I always have the students who aren't quite, you know, who sit in the front row. But anyway, I can get 24 a whole bunch of different ways. Okay? And that's kind of like what hashing is. With hashing, there's a value, yet you don't know how I got to that value. Think of your ATM card. You know, the PIN that you use with your ATM card is actually hashed, and that value is encoded on the magnetic strip on the back of the card. So when you go to the ATM machine and swipe your card, and then you enter your PIN, what happens is your PIN that you enter on the keypad is hashed just as that original value was hashed on the magnetic strip, and then they're compared. If they match, you get your money out. If they don't match, no money for you to that. Okay? So that's just kind of a simple example of what hashing is. It's a value, and we arrived at that value in a way that you can't work backwards from. Now, with password hashing in terms of an operating system, when Windows or Linux or even Apple Mac, when a password is created, what happens is that password is hashed, and then that hash value is stored out there. The clear text password is not stored out there on your computer. So, when a user enters their password to log in, I enter my password, it is then hashed in the same way, and if the two hashes match, the one that's stored and the one that is the result of what I just entered, if they match, bingo, I get to get in. Okay? Operating system then doesn't store my unencrypted passwords. Okay? Now, how does Windows do this? Windows actually hashes passwords in one of two different ways. One's called an LM hash and one's called an NT hash. The LM hash is really not a hash itself. The LM hash only uses something called a cryptographic one-way function. It's different, as we'll see in just a second. So the LM hash is not truly a hash. This LM hash is very weak. It's based on 20-year-old technology. I could have 142 character set, but only 68 come from the standard keyboard in an LM hash. With an LM hash also, it is case insensitive. It can't distinguish between uppercase and lowercase. And what the LM hash does is it takes whatever password you enter and it splits it into two parts, two 7-character parts. If the password is less than 14 characters, it simply pads it with space. If it's more than 14 characters, guess what it does with everything above 14? Just truncate it, doesn't care. So you get a password that's 40 characters long, and the LM hash only cares about the first 14 characters. Not very secure. Here's actually how an LM hash is created. The string is converted to uppercase. The password then is padded with nulls. It is truncated. It's split into two 7-byte chunks. Then each chunk is actually used as a key to encrypt a fixed string of two 8-byte values, and then the two values are concatenated. Here's kind of a diagram of how that happens. What we enter is CL1, and you'll see that those things then are cut and then put together, and then we have how we have our LM hash. LM hash is very weak. There's something called the NT hash, which is much better. It is case sensitive. Character set of 65,000 characters. NT hash is actually a hash, and the current version is NTLMV2. That's a very good one. And here's how it would be done. The problem is, I think that's slide in it. Yeah. Although the LM hash is weak, legacy Windows systems still store both the weak LM hash and the NT hash by default. Wow. What that means is, if you know someone running a Windows XP system, anybody here know somebody who's running a Windows XP system? Would you care to guess what percentage of Windows systems out there today are old XP systems? Anyone care to guess? 60%. 60% of the systems out there running Windows are still running Windows XP. Wow. And Windows has dropped Service Packs for Service Pack and dropped support for Service Pack 1 and Service Pack 2. Only Service Pack 3 now is supported. But if someone is out there, one of those 60% people is out there still running XP. XP is storing both the LM hash and the NT hash by default. And there are some things that you can do to tell us not to do that. And if someone's running Windows XP, I certainly encourage them to do that. Anyway. Okay, so those are some of the weaknesses with it. Let's move on and talk about password attacks. We're going to talk about password guessing, about dictionary attacks, about brute force, and rainbow attacks. And we'll look at some stuff. Password guessing. When I talk with students, and I'll back up. Over the last couple of semesters, I've had the opportunity to teach a course to essentially non-IT students. So I really am getting a flavor as to kind of what the average student is kind of thinking about in terms of security, and it's been very eye-opening to me. But anyway, a lot of students
So they have to know the algorithm that's used for that.
Yes.
Okay, so, right. And so, no, they have to use another system.
Well, they could just use another system, okay?
Okay,
Yeah.
so, okay, that's